service sniper, they call him, or sharpshooter sniper,
Yeah.
because he didn't know extraordinary shot, obviously, and he didn't know there was a problem. And he was
Yeah.
able to pick it all out within 5 seconds. And he used one bullet from very far away, I guess probably about 400 yards. The shooter was 130, but he was on the
Yeah.
he was on the opposite side of the field and the podium, and he saw the smoke and the flame from the gun, immediately recognized it, and immediately took a shot. And it was one perfect shot from very far away. And if he didn't do
Yeah.
that, Elon, he would have. I mean, if he would have, a lot of people, a lot more people could have been
Sure.
badly hurt and killed. So
Yeah.
I have to
Absolutely.
take my hat off to him, because that's also a surreal. You know, he's been with them for 23 years, and
Yeah.
he's never had anything like this. And all of a sudden, he has to act, and it's a very tough thing to
Sure.
act and to be shooting somebody. But he saw the gun, saw the smoke, saw the flame from the gun, very far away. I obviously has very good eyes. He's got very good vision, which I assume you have
Yeah.
to have in that particular work. But he took
Absolutely.
aim very quickly, and they say it was approximately 5 seconds from long range,
Yeah.
one bullet. If that didn't happen,
Yeah.
because the shooter had a lot of bullets, he had a lot of cartridges up
Sure.
there with him, so could
Well,
have been very.
I mean that's clearly he was very competent in taking that shot to stop the attempted assassination. But I mean, there does seem to be, I mean, some pretty significant failings elsewhere in the system. Like, there's just no way that, like, how on earth does a shooter get on a roof 130 yards away? That seems crazy. I think most people are how on earth could such a thing happen?
Well, I view it as two ways. There should have been nobody on the roof. There were people,
Yeah.
because there were so many tens of thousands of people there. There were people that were seeing him, and there was one woman with a red shirt, and
It's like I guess, I mean, for my part, and I think probably many members of the public are wondering how the heck are by pointing out there's a guy on the roof with a gun,
yeah,
and they're seeing it, but somehow it's not being addressed. That does seem
yeah.
crazy.
Well, they're going to learn from this. The communication between the local police, who sort of families are great. But we're going back to Butler. And I think I'll probably start by saying, as I was saying,
As you
prior
were
to
saying,
being so horribly
so-
interrupted.
yeah.
But
So rudely interrupted by an
yeah,
assassination
so
attempt.
but no, but the chart,
Some people have no manners.
Elon, the chart was just a chart that in my last week we had the best illegal immigration numbers, meaning stopping. It was at the lowest. You've seen the chart. It's become quite a famous chart.
Yeah.
But that was the lowest
Yeah.
point ever recorded. It was a really, I mean, I was very what happened with these people, Kamala and Joe. You see what happened. They just let it go. I had remain in Mexico policies. I had all these different policies that was so good. Guys like Tom Holman and Brandon Judd from Border Patrol. These are all people that they've been on television. They said it's the best numbers we've ever had. We had so many different checks, catch and release in Mexico, not the United. We had catch and release in the United States. We had it in Mexico. We had so many things. We had things where if many people come in there, they have contagious diseases. Setting literally records, and all I was doing is showing that, and I use it sometimes,
Sure.
and in this case, I'm glad I used it. I can tell you that, but they were fantastic numbers. But I'm going to sleep with that chart always. I'll be sleeping with that chart. That chart was very important for a lot of reasons.
Well, I mean, would it be accurate to say that you're supportive of legal immigration, but we also need to shut down illegal immigration, and especially unvetted illegal
Yes.
immigration, because and that's not the same as saying that everyone who's an illegal immigrant is bad. In fact, does that accurately
100%.
represent your position?
I say it
Okay.
very simply. They have to come in legally. They have to be checked.
Yeah.
Because look, Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. Everything that I do, she's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now. They could do things right now. It's horrible. No tax on tips, and all of a sudden she's making a speech and there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. They had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this on tips. They have a policy. They had a policy that they were really going to go after you and were really harassing people horribly. And then all of a sudden, for politics, she says, she comes out with what I said, which I think is terrible. And I think it's also hitting them very hard. These people are fake. Now they're also saying they did a good job on the border. We had the worst numbers in the history of the world, not of our country. There's never been a country in history that has had a catastrophe like this. We've had, I believe, and I think you believe this too, you hear 12 million, 13. I believe it's over 20 million people came into our country, many coming from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions, or a bigger version of that is insane asylums. And many are terrorists. And I'll tell you what, they're coming not just from South America, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from all over the world. They're coming from Asia, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from countries that are stupidly and horribly bombing Israel October 7th. They're coming from all over the world. And you look at, it's so sad, October 7th, because it should have never happened. It's so sad when you look at Ukraine. It should have never happened. We have a defective government. These are defective people, and they're not people that should be running it. But where you see it the best is the border, because you have millions of people coming in a month, and then she gets up and she tries to pretend like she's going to do something. She had 3.5 years. And by the way, they have another 5 months that they can do something, but they won't do anything. Good.
Yeah. No, I think it is essential to have free unless you have a secure border. And
And
uh,
secure elections
you
too.
know, yeah, absolutely secure elections, and so it's just essential to have a real border, or we can't function as a country, and our service, our essential services are being overwhelmed in a lot of cities, um, and as we were talking about earlier, I think having a legal immigration process that is smooth and efficient and done well, and speaking as someone who is a legal immigrant, and I think that I mean, like one way to think of it is, who do you want on your team? Um, who do you want on Team America? And I think we want to just say, okay, we want to let in people who are going to, be great contributors to our society and to our economy,
Right.
and who do you want on the team? And it's not to say that, like in my opinion, actually, I'd say like probably most of the illegal immigrants actually are actually good, hardworking people. That's my opinion. But some are not, and you just have this sort of adverse selection process where, if somebody's if somebody's like you know uh, has a career in theft or robbery, I don't understand what's taken them so long to get here, because we're such a target-rich environment. I mean, why aren't more people who have a career in, bad things coming here sooner? Because it's a piece of cake to go rob, houses in LA or New York, compared to other parts of the world. And in a lot of places in America, if you try to stop the person who's robbing you, you'll be arrested.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's insane.
It's right. I mean, what's happening with crime, and our police are so good, but they're not allowed to do their job. I think it's a much bigger number than you think. They're
I
allowing,
think you're
again,
right.
they're
Yeah.
allowing people from their jails, and you would have had all of them. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers. They're taking, frankly, their prisoners. They're emptying out their prisons. They're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're
Yeah.
delivering them into
But
the.
that's what Castro did
Yeah,
that.
well, he did on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
It was a much smaller
Yeah.
scale. But this is a massive scale because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening: crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. This is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be.
Yeah.
And I saw it today in New York where somebody was knifed, where they raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters, and started
Sure.
pulling out the knives, and bad things happened today. But this is happening every day. These are rough people. These are people that are in jail for
Yeah.
murder and all sorts of things, and they're releasing them into our country, and they're telling them, if you come back, we're going to kill you. We're going to give you the death penalty or kill you. So they don't want to come back. But these are rough people.
Yeah.
These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people, and it's horrible what they're doing. And she's in charge of it because now she's trying to say she
Sure.
had nothing to do with it, and she's such a liar because she was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there. She went to one location which had nothing to do with where the problem is. She went in and out, I
Right.
guess, because she was getting a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
had nothing to do where the problem
Yeah.
is. But she was
Well.
the
Well.
border czar, and people
Yeah. Yeah.
can't allow them to get away with their disinformation campaign. Now she's trying to say that she wasn't really involved, and the whole thing is horrible. She was totally in charge. She could have shut the border down without him. He didn't know what he was doing anyway, so he wouldn't have even known
Yeah.
what happened. You could shut the border down; he
Yeah.
wouldn't even know the difference. But uh, the fact is that she was border czar. But if you don't have to call her
Yes.
that, the fact is you could just call her. She was in charge of the border, and the border was the worst
Right.
ever.
Either way, we don't have a secure border, and we have people streaming over like it looks like a World War Z zombie apocalypse at times. like, is it real or not? So because you see things, you're like, is it real? So I went to the border at Eagle Pass, and I saw for myself in Texas, and I was like, okay, it's real. I'm like seeing this in real time. I actually posted the video like just live. I just flew there one day and just to see, hey, is this made up or real? And I'm just seeing people stream across the border, and I have to say, at least the people that I saw did not look friendly. So
These are
people can look at my video and say, hey,
Yeah.
these people look friendly. I don't look super friendly. So
These are people that Elon would not be the same man if he had to walk across the street and look these people in the eye. These are rough people. These are really rough people coming across. And I know rough people. And these are people that we don't want in our country. And, the caravans are coming in, and they're putting, and who's doing this are the heads of the countries. And you would be doing it, and so would I. And everyone would say, oh, what a terrible thing to say. The fact is, it's brilliant for them because they're taking all of their bad people, really bad people. And I hate to say this, the reason the numbers are much bigger than you would think is they're also taking their non-productive people. Now, these aren't people that will kill you. We have enough of them. But these are people that are non-productive. They are just not productive. I mean, for whatever reason, they're not workers, or they don't want to work, or whatever. And these countries are getting rid of non-productive people in the caravans in many cases. And they're also getting rid of their murderers and their drug dealers and the people that are really brutal people. And they're coming into our country at levels that have never been seen before. And I saw an ad just before I got on the air. I'm walking over here, and I saw an ad by Kamala saying how she is going to provide border security. Where has she been for 3.5 years? For 3.5 years, we have 20 million people poured in. It's a terrible thing.
I think this, frankly, I think this is a fundamental existential issue for the United States. And if we have another 4 more years of I'm not sure we've got a country.
You don't have a country left. Elon, if they get in, you will have 50 to 60 million people from all over the world. South America, we think of Honduras and El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, the 4. But it's not that. It's everywhere. They're coming in from everywhere. And I had to stay in Mexico.
I think this is a super important point. Like, people, it's like, basically, when I went down there, I was like, well, where are people from? It's like almost no one was from Mexico.
No, Mexico less.
It's just the border. It's just the border with Mexico. But the people coming in, it's Earth, the rest of Earth, and America is only about 4 or 5% of the population of Earth. It would only take a few percent of the rest of Earth to overwhelm everything.
We're already overwhelmed, Elon. We're overwhelmed. You had to see the news tonight about New York, and I love that place. And what they're doing to it is horrible. What they're doing to it, and all the courts do is they try and focus on Trump. Okay, let's focus on Trump, who did nothing wrong. I complain about a rigged election. Elon, what's happened is unbelievable. You have from Africa. From the Congo, they're coming from the Congo, and 22 people came in from the Congo recently, and they're murderers, and they drop them. They take them out of jails, which is very expensive, to maintain the jails. Although they don't do too much maintaining, I can tell you. But they take them out of jails, prisons. They take them out, and they bring them to the United States. They deposit them in the United States and say, "Don't ever come back, or you're going to be executed." And they don't want to come back. But they won't come back.
Sure.
But they're coming from Africa. They're coming from Asia. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from South America.
Well,
they're coming from everywhere.
Earth, basically.
And there are a lot of really bad ones.
It's just an everywhere on Earth thing, and it's just not possible for the United States to absorb everyone from Earth, or even a few percent of the rest of Earth. It's just not possible. So,
well, Elon, we're going to have to finish this up. We're going to have the largest deportation in history of this country, and we have no choice. Otherwise, we're going to have a country. What they've done. And you would be the same. You would have. I'll tell you what. Venezuela has not gotten rid of all of them. They've gotten rid of about 70% of their really bad. put into the United States. The same with other countries. Some
Sure.
are at 30%, some are at 50%. They're all different. But the bottom line is they're all going to be at 100%. Why wouldn't you put 100% of it?
Yeah.
And they're doing it right now while this third-rate phony candidate. Don't forget, I beat Biden. He failed in the debate miserably. And, some people said, oh, gee, it's too bad. It's too bad he did so badly, or I did well in the debate. The first night they said, wow. One of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed. And then 2 days later, they didn't talk about that. They just said he was bad. But that's okay. That's the way I get treated. And I don't mind that at all. What I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different.
Yeah.
Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Yeah, they just took him out back behind the shed and basically shot him.
What they did with this guy, and I'm no fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan mess, if you think of it.
Well,
and we wouldn't have had Afghanistan. But we think of it. You take a few of those events away, and we have a different world. We would also have inflation was caused by oil.
Yeah, no. I think you make an excellent point here, which is that when other countries can, that are thinking about invading or doing bad things, when they're thinking about that, they're thinking about, okay, what's the American president going to do? And do they fear the American president, or is there someone they do not respect and do not fear? And I think they would rightfully be. I mean, but that's like. Whereas I think people are not going to be, and they obviously have not been at all intimidated by Biden, and they certainly will not. Of global security, that if the American president is someone that, like, evil dictators are scared of, that makes a huge difference to the security of the world.
So I had a good relationship with Putin, despite the Russia hoax that lasted for over 2 years. Just a hoax created by Hillary Clinton and Adam Schiff, some just bad people, just sick people, frankly. I mean, Schiff is a sick person. He's going to end up probably being a senator. It's hard to believe. The whole thing is hard to believe. But, they put our country in danger with that stuff, too. They actually, when they make up stories, and you have to fight your way out of it for a long time. But I know Putin very well. I got along with him very well. He respected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. I shut down Nord Stream 2. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. Biden came, and then they say, I loved Russia. I was a friend of Putin, and I loved Russia. No. He actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline, the biggest pipeline. They were looking at that to fund. And this pathetic president gets in there. And the first thing he did, one of the early things he did, is he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow. I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train that catches on fire. But think of it. He shut down the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline. He shuts that down, and he approves the Russian pipeline.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's inconsistent. Importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security. characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to do.
I know every one of
and
them.
that puts it puts the
Yeah.
whole world in danger.
Elon, I know every one
It's
of
a
them,
big
and I
deal.
know them well. I know Putin, I know President Xi, I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, oh, this is terrible. He said, I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough, they're smart, they're vicious, and they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even believe it. They can't believe this happened. All the stuff that you're seeing now, all the horror that you look at Israel, they're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me. You know, when I was there, and I say it with respect because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. And I meant it. And they said, we'll pass. They didn't buy oil. Other countries, likewise.
Sure.
You want to buy, you're not doing business with the United States. And they were at a point where they had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for any of these instruments of terror. And it was amazing. In fact, there were articles when I was leaving, which is hard to believe, actually, especially when you look at what's happened to our country. Our country is so bad right now. It's such a different place. We were respected. Think of it. 4 years ago, we were so respected to a point where when I said don't buy oil, they didn't buy oil, but they had no money, and Israel would have never been attacked. Zero chance. And again, I said to Vladimir Putin, I said, don't do it. You can't do it, Vladimir. You do it, it's going to be a bad day. You cannot do it. And I told him things that never have done. I got along well with them. I hope to get along with them again. You know, getting along well with them is a good thing, not a bad thing. I got along well with Kim Jong-un just before entering. You know, it's a sort of a ritual. And I sat down with him and we talked. It was supposed to be for a very short period of time. It turned out to be a long period of time. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. I had that problem worked out very quickly. It was nasty at the beginning with Rocket Man and, you know, all the different things. But all of a sudden I got a call.
Those were some epic tweets, by the way.
Yeah, they were. They were epic. Everything. He said that he has a red button on his desk. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but my red button is much bigger, and my red button works. And then I called him Little Rocket Man of Little Rocket Man. Anyway, here's the bottom line. All of a sudden I got a call from him, and they said they want to meet. They want to meet me, and we met.
Yeah.
As you remember, we met in Singapore. We met also in Vietnam. And I got along with him great. We were in no danger. But President Obama thought we were going to end up in a war, a nuclear war with him. And let me tell you, he's got a lot of nuclear stuff too.
Exactly.
He's got plenty of nuclear. He can do plenty of damage. So
yes, I mean it's because people like Kim Jong-un, they respond to strength, not weakness.
Well.
And
he and I had a good relationship. Remember I met him and we walked onto his land. Nobody ever walked onto his land before. I walked onto. I wouldn't say. Let's bring up Secret Service again. I wouldn't say they were thrilled when I did that. I walked onto his land, and it was an amazing period. But we were not in danger with him because of me. You know, I always say that we have enemies on the outside and we have enemies on the inside. We have some really bad people in our government and people that are controlling of the people. I mean, I'd mention names, but I really don't want to give them the credit. But we have some really bad, and I say they're more dangerous than Russia and China. If you have a smart president, a president that gets it, we are not in danger from those countries because they need us and they need our help. I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden and Bush to it. They also got, if you take a look, Iran and they have North Korea. That's they call it the axis of evil. In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise one eighth of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming, because we have 5 countries
Well,
now that
yeah.
have significant nuclear power, and we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden. Biden did something with Russia. There was no chance of him ever going in. And when I left, and then after I left, they started forming big armies on the border with Ukraine, right? And I looked at that, and I thought he was doing that because Putin's a good negotiator. I thought he was doing that to negotiate. But then Biden started saying such stupid things. For instance, he said that it can be a NATO country. And we're going to make it all in the United States, but we're going to have protection, because it just takes one maniac to start something. We're going to have protection, and why shouldn't we have an Iron Dome? Israel has one. Some other places
Yeah.
have one that nobody even knows about, frankly. But Israel has it. We're going to have an Iron Dome. But with all of that being said, to me that's so important, the most important. But with all of that being said, the election's coming up, and the people want to hear about the economy and the fact that
Absolutely,
they can't
sure.
buy groceries because they don't have enough money to buy groceries. The inflation has killed them. Food prices are up 50, 60, even 100% in some cases. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen. And it's a shame. And that's the thing that people most care about, in my opinion. They care about the border a lot. And we discussed the border at great length. It's nice to have a
Yeah.
forum like this where I can discuss something at length. And by the way, you think Biden could do this interview? Do you think that Kamala could do this interview? They would take a pass on
No,
you.
they could.
That somebody that does this for a living can't answer a question or is afraid to do an interview. And in her case, with a very friendly interview, she's got all friendly interviewers. It's pretty shame.
Yes, absolutely.
But the big thing now is the
Well,
economy, Elon.
Yeah.
And as much as
Yeah.
I mean, I view nuclear as the single most important thing, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't understand that. But it doesn't have to. If I understand it, that's all you need. Because if I was president, you're not going to have that kind of a problem. But the thing that they really is making them angry is what Kamala and Biden have allowed to happen to the economy. It's a disaster with inflation. The inflation, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you make. The inflation is eating you alive. If you're a worker or if you're just a middle income person, you can't afford. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, people were saving a lot of money. Today, they're using
Yeah.
all their money and borrowing money just to live. It's a horrible thing
Right.
that's happening, and we'll end that
Well, I think
quickly.
a lot of yeah, a lot of people just don't understand where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from government overspending because the checks never bounce when it's written by the government. So if the government spends far more than it brings in, that increases the money supply, and if the money supply increases faster than the rate of goods and services,
Right.
that's inflation. So really, we need to have we need to reduce our government spending, and we need to re-examine. I think we need like a government efficiency commission to say like, hey, where are we spending money that's sensible? Where is it not sensible? And we need to live within our means. We're currently adding, I think, $1 trillion to the deficit roughly
Right.
every 100 days.
That's right.
And the interest payments on the national debt have now exceed the defense budget. It's on the order of $1 trillion.
It's interest.
And it keeps
Yeah,
growing.
I rebuilt our military, largely rebuilt our military, did a great job on it, which was so important. We had jets, we had fighters that were, and bombers that were 70 years old. And we did a great job in that. Then by the way, we gave In many cases, the governors don't do a good job, and they're crime-ridden places. You wonder, how do they continue to just go on? It's not
Well,
a good
I think there's.
situation.
I mean, I think the only thing that's going to force some of these states to change is if they risk bankruptcy and they're not getting bailed out by the federal
Right,
government.
right. Well,
That's
you're
the
going to
only thing
have
that's going to
that.
get them to change.
You remember the
Yeah.
area in California where they had that, where I guess somebody had sticky fingers and they stole a lot of money, and they went into a form of chapter, and it was very
Yeah,
nasty
yeah.
for a period of time. But now it's probably the most popular place in all of California. So at some point, something like that may have to happen. But the problem is, you can't penalize people that loan money to the state when you have incompetent people like a Pritzker. Look, the family didn't want him in the family business, and then he ends up being governor of Illinois. So what is he going to be? Is he going to be a great governor? And you have people. I could name every one of them. I got to know every one of
Yep.
these, and some are very good, and some are just horrible.
Well, I think that, I mean, the larger point here too, as you're saying, like a lot of people are concerned about the economy, a lot of people are concerned about inflation, and inflation is effectively a tax on people that save money,
Yeah.
and for people that are working day to day, it's just a form of taxation, and if we can solve the government spending problem, we'll solve the inflation.
People that did it the way they were taught to do it all through, their younger life and their young life and their whole life. The people that saved money and then they got no interest in anything like that. I mean, those people have been absolutely decimated, and we're going to bring those people back and help those people. We've got to get the prices down. When I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years ago, when you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at it's sticker shock. They call it sticker shock, right?
I think it really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves living standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason, but unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation. And if
Elon,
those two things, those are the big deals.
We set a record. We did more deregulation and more restrictions on all of the different businesses than any other president. Remember, I had the rule for every one we put in, you have to get rid of 10 or 12. And we did radical cuts on all of that. And a lot of that's being put back by this administration. And we did radical cuts on things that weren't necessary. But we were all set. We had the best economy ever maybe in the world. And then what happened is COVID came in, and we had to focus on that, and nobody knew what it was. And I always say I got good marks on economy, good marks on military. We knocked out ISIS. We did so many different things. We rebuilt. But, I happened. A gift from China, from Wuhan, came in from Wuhan, the Wuhan labs, and I always said it, and it turned out to be right. We're set to start reducing debt. We're going to reduce taxes further. I gave the largest tax cuts, and we were going to reduce taxes still further for middle-income people, not only businesses. But we did it for businesses because they're the ones that's why we had the great job numbers. But we were set to really start reducing debt. And, we're sitting on the biggest pile of liquid gold anywhere in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia. And we were going to drill, and we were going to make so much money. We were going to supply Europe with oil. I had stopped the Russian pipeline, and we were going to supply them with oil and gas. We were going to make a fortune. And then the COVID came in, and we really had to divert. Then what happened is when they came in, we kept a lot of businesses alive. If I didn't do what we did, we would have had a 1929 type depression. But the problem is when Biden came in, he got trillions of dollars and just started spending it stupidly. You didn't need it anymore. We got over that bad period where everybody was dying and feeling, it was just not a good period. Interestingly, during his administration, many more people died during his administration of COVID than during my administration, and we really got the brunt of it. But people don't realize more people died during his administration than ours. But it diverted us from doing what I wanted to do. But we had the greatest for almost 3 years. We had the
Yeah.
great, and you know that probably better than anybody. So many of your friends said to me, the best years we've ever had in business were during the Trump years, and also said that African American, Hispanic American were so incredible. They were having the best. Asian American women, men, young people without a diploma, young people that graduated from the best colleges, from MIT, from the Wharton School, from all of the great colleges, Harvard. They were doing better, and people without a diploma were doing better, and everybody was be having inflation right now, which is killing our country.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I should probably say something about maybe my views on, because I think I'm probably different from what most people would assume. Because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving, and the economy would collapse. So it's I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry, and the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other countries. And it would help with prosperity in the U.S. And at the same time, obviously, my view is like we do over time want to move to a sustainable energy economy, because eventually you do run out of. I mean, you run out of oil and gas. It's not there. It's not infinite. And there is some risk. I think the risk is not as high as a lot of people say it is with respect to global warming. But I think if you just keep increasing the parts per million in the atmosphere long enough, eventually it actually simply gets uncomfortable to breathe. People don't realize this. If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. So I mean, it still gives us. So what it means is like we still have quite a bit of time, but so there's not like we don't need to rush, and we don't need to stop farmers from farming, or prevent people from having steaks or basic stuff like that. Like you can leave the farmers alone.
I agree. How crazy is that? Where
I mean,
you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle, and the whole world is a little crazy. But it's largely taken its lead from us. I do say though, I've heard the electric car. Fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. We're from 100 to 500 years left. Much of it hasn't even been found yet.
Yeah.
But there are tremendous, like Anwar. I got Anwar in Alaska approved. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. The first thing that Biden did was unimprove it to get rid of it. He ended it. His secretary went in and she ended it. And what a disgrace. That's Anwar. That's bigger, or they think it could be bigger than Saudi Arabia in Alaska. Could be bigger than Saudi Arabia. But they went in and they terminated it. And I'll get it going very quickly, because not only is it big for Alaska, I mean, you talk about economic development, that for the United States, I mean, that is, they say bigger than Saudi Arabia or the same size, and pure,
Yeah.
really good stuff. And, they end it. So I think we have, perhaps hundreds of years left. Nobody really knows. But during that
I mean,
time, something
my
will
estimate,
come around that will be
yeah,
very good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and my estimate would be, a little more aggressive than that, but it's not the sort of like we're all going to die in 5 years stuff. That's obviously BS. But I mean, my view is like if you just look at sort of the parts per million that increments every year, you get sort of 2 or 3 parts per million every year of CO2. I mean, I think some of that it's problematic if it accelerates, if you start going from 2 or 3
Right.
to say 5, and then there may be some situations where you get just a step change increase in the CO2. And I think we don't want to get too close to 1,000 ppm, because like that's actually makes it uncomfortable to breathe. Like just existing in 1,000 ppm CO2 is uncomfortable. That's like that's considered like an industrial hazard.
Right.
Just so it's that's actually, you start getting headaches and stuff. So it's even without global warming, it's not. To 100 years from now, we're I don't know, mostly sustainable. I think that'll probably be okay. So it's not like the house is on fire immediately, but I think it is something we need to move towards. And on on balance, it's probably better to move there faster than slower. But like I said, without vilifying the oil and gas industry, and without causing hardship in the short term. I think this can be done without, people can still have, a stake, and they can still drive gasoline cars, and it's okay. It's like, it's not, I don't think we should vilify people for it, but I think we should just generally lean in the direction of sustainability. And I actually think solar is going to be a majority of Earth's energy generation in the future, and it's certainly trending that way. And so you get the solar power, combine that with batteries, so because obviously the sun doesn't shine at night, and then you use that to charge the electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what Tesla's trying to move things towards, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that environmentalism, that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make sure that our cars are beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, they're sexy. I mean, they're cool. In fact, literally, I mean, the sexy joke, Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke out there. But I don't know, I like cheesy humor, so but I'm a big fan of, like, let's have an inspiring future, and let's work towards a better future, and we can do so without demonizing people.
Right. I'm okay. It's very interesting. You use the word global warming, and today they use the word climate change because you have some places that go up, and so they were getting themselves in a little trouble with the word global warming, because not every place is warming. Some places are going the opposite direction. But I'm sort of waiting for you to come up with solar panels on the roofs of your cars and on the trunks of the cars. On flat surfaces, on certain surfaces might be good, at least in certain areas of the country where you have the world, where you have the sun. But I would think that this would be something that would be interesting. But the one thing that I don't understand is that people talk about global warming or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me, that's an immediate problem, because you have, as I said, 5 countries where you have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president, because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number one, and I mean, we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that, you're not surprised to hear, very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even
Yeah.
surpassing. But to me, the biggest
Yeah.
problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's, a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. And when I talk
Yeah.
about
Nuclear power is underrated. It's
I'll
awesome.
prevent World War
Yeah.
III, I will. But the truth is that you have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is
Yeah.
a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is
Absolutely.
underrated.
You're right.
And it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. And if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not going to try to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining operation. Right. And there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year. And you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So.
Maybe they'll have to change the name. The name is just rough name. There are some areas like when you see what happened in
bad branding.
Right, we have to rebrand it. We'll have to give it a good name. We'll name it after you or something. No, it has a branding problem. When you see what happened,
it does have a branding problem.
When you see what happened in Japan, where they say you won't be able to go on the land for about 3,000 years. Did you ever see that? And in Russia, where they had the problem, where they, there's a lot of bad things happened, and they have a problem. And they say that in 2,000 years, people will start to occupy the land again. You realize it's pretty bad.
No, that's not true.
But you're right about it. It's amazing.
It's actually not that bad. So like after Fukushima happened in Japan, like people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. And I donated a solar water treatment, a solar powered system for a water treatment plant. And
but you haven't been feeling so well lately, and I'm worried about it.
No, but I mean,
I'm only kidding.
It's fine, It's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that
That's right.
So it's not as scary as people think, basically. But let's see. I mean, are there some other topics we should touch on? Like lawfare. I think we need to be concerned about
what they've done to this country.
Obviously,
yeah. Well, we just won the big case in Florida. This was a Biden administration did something that's never been done in this country, and that's go after their political opponent, me, with this nonsense and just nonsense. And the big case in Florida we won, but they always pick a judge and a jury, and they use local DAs, they use the local attorney generals, like Fani, Fani, spelled Fani, Fani, and it's all a big hoax, and it's all run from there, like in Manhattan. One of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state, the Letitia James deal. It's called lawfare, warfare. It's a terrible thing and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics. The incredible thing is it actually drove my numbers up because people see, fortunately I have a platform like you, or, in all fairness, like a conversation like this, where I can talk about it and people understand. I mean, you fight for election integrity and you end up getting indicted because you're fighting for election integrity. And when the day comes that you can't fight for election integrity, you don't have a country anymore. So what happens is they went after their political opponent, me. Now Biden's, close to vegetable stage, in my opinion. Okay, I looked at him today on the beach. And I said, why would anybody allow him? The guy could barely walk. Why would anybody allow him? Does he have a political advisor that thinks this looks good? He thinks this looks good because it looks so bad, and it's ridiculous. I mean, and he's been doing that for a long time. He can't lift the chair. The chair weighs about 3 ounces. It's meant for children and old people to lift, and he can't lift it. The whole thing is crazy.
Well, he's clearly. He's clearly like we just don't have a president right now.
You don't have a president, and she's going to be worse than him because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as Attorney General, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original Attorney General in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states there you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our country is becoming a very dangerous place. And she is a radical left San Francisco liberal. And now she's trying to protect. I want a wall.
I think that's,
she wants to release all the prisoners that are in detention. And some of these guys are really bad.
Right.
That just came out today. She doesn't want to build the wall, even though the walls work. Walls and wheels. In your business, everything you do is obsolete, almost, well, not the tunnels, but everything is obsolete. Even your rocket ships, they're like a month later, they're obsolete. You find a better way to. The only thing that's not obsolete is a wall and a wheel. And the wall, I built hundreds of miles of wall, and that's why we had such good numbers. I was going to add 200 miles. We bought it. We could have flipped it up in 3 weeks, and they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. That meant, I said, wow, that means that they actually do want to have open borders. She wants to have open borders, and now she's going like she's tough on the border. It's such a lie.
Yeah, this is simply not true. This is simply not true.
And everybody knows it's not true. It's a disgrace that she can say it.
No, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far left.
Worse than Bernie Sanders. She is considered more liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic, and if she's going to be our president, very quickly you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. Now all of a sudden she's saying, no, I really want to see fracking. If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. Like the Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him, both sides. That was a hard thing to do, unification.
Yeah, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What is that?
Is a very pro-Israel. If you vote for her, it's worse than Biden, and Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined. And you see tonight, I mean, as we're doing this, I'm seeing reports coming that they expect an attack tonight or tomorrow from hundreds and maybe thousands of rockets. Their Iron Dome, as they call it, as we all call it, but their shield that they build, that can be swamped. We'll use the term that's appropriate, swamped. But they swamp it by shooting enough missiles. You know this better than anybody. By shooting enough missiles, they can't defend themselves. They just obliterate the whole place. And that's what some people think they're looking to do. and we have no leadership. There's no respect for the United States of America with these people. And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
she'll be worse than him because she's a believer
Yeah. No,
in
I
being
think you're right.
radical left, and he wasn't.
I think you're right. I mean, you really, it's important for the public that may be listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before the last month, and say, is that a track record you agree with? And I think if you're an independent moderate, you definitely would not agree with it, because it is her behavior has been far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she in fact is not moderate.
Well, her
think
running mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now that's all I
that's
have
weird.
to hear. Tampons in
That's
boys'
weird.
bathrooms, and that means she
Yeah,
believes in that too. I mean,
yeah, that's
she
not
picked
okay.
this guy because he was the closest to her. A lot of people thought she'd pick sort of the opposite, but she picked an anti-Israel radical left person. But she is far worse, they say, than Bernie Sanders. If we have her as a president, if we have a Democrat at this moment as the president, I don't think our country can survive.
I think it's a massive. I think we're in massive trouble, frankly, with the Kamala administration, and that's my honest opinion. And I think really it's essential that seen this, but I got a letter from the EU Commission, saying, to not have disinformation on during this discussion that we're having, and there's a lot of attempts to do censorship and to force censorship even on Americans from other countries, and what do you think about that?
Well, I know the European Union very well. They take great advantage of the United States in trade, as you know. We, through a different forum, NATO, we protect them. And yet, if you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible. The same thing with our farmers. Our farmers find it very difficult to do business. We have a deficit with them of $250 billion, which people don't know. It sounds so nice, the European Union, but let me tell you, they're not as tough as China, but they're bad. And I let them know it. And that's probably why they notified you. No, they don't treat our country well. We defend them, with Ukraine. So we're in for 250 billion, and they're in for about 71 billion, and they have the same size. If you add up the European nations that in terms of an economy, it's about the same size. When you say as us, and they're in, and they're in much greater risk. They're right there. We have an ocean separating us from. In this case, the enemy would be Russia. It used to be for the Soviet Union, but let's assume they're close enough. And what happens is they're in for 70 something million. I think even less than that, billion, and we're in for about 250 billion, and it could be a lot higher than that. And I say, why aren't you going to equalize? Why aren't they paying what we're paying? And they're in much more, it's much more important for them because of the fact that, they're right near there. I mean, they're all sort of in that location. We're not. But they should, and I did it with NATO. There were only 7 countries that were paid up in NATO out of 28 at the time. And the United States was subsidized. The United States was subsidizing. But you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in, and
I think a lot of the public isn't aware of the fact that the United States pays a disproportionate share of the NATO expenses,
and then we get taken advantage of on trade. So think about it.
Well, I mean, the point of NATO is defending Europe, and it's it's like, then okay, well, why is the United States paying disproportionately more to defend Europe than Europe? That doesn't make sense. That's unfair, and that is an appropriate thing to address.
Well, when you talk about cost cutting and savings and everything else, I mean, honestly, look, there's nobody that feels worse about the Ukraine situation than I do because I know it would have never happened. I know Zelensky. he was very honorable to me, because when they went with the Russia hoax and they said I had a phone call with him, he said it was a perfect phone call. It was a great phone call. He could have grandstanded and, said, oh, he was very threatening. He said, no, it was a very nice phone call. I called him up to congratulate him on his win, and you end up getting impeached because these people are lunatics. I was talking about the difference from the people within and the enemies on the outside. In many cases, the people from within are more dangerous for our country than the Russias and the Chinas. If you have a smart president, you're not going to have a problem with them. You're going to do things.
Yeah.
Now, they've taken advantage of
absolutely.
us incredibly, but you're going to do things with the right person.
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that you're a believer and an advocate of free speech, because during your first term as president, you were attacked relentlessly every day, often very unfairly with with false attacks, and you didn't try to shut down the media. You didn't try to inhibit their freedom of speech, and I think that says a lot.
Well, the good thing is that you and I have, and some people, very few, we can get the word out. Although sometimes it's hard because they don't want to print it, like we're having a great conversation right now. Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't, because she's not smart. She's not a smart person, by the way. She can't have this conversation. And Biden, we don't even have to talk about it. I mean, he couldn't have this conversation. He would have given up on the first half of a question. He would have walked out. But the beauty is that we can have a conversation, and I'm able to get it out because I get treated unfairly.
This is a really big point. You can actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
And you can't have a conversation with Biden or Kamala. It's like it's not possible.
That's
so this is like talking to an NPC. No. So it's just impossible.
Well, but think of it. We need a man or person who's unbelievably sharp in order to stop all the nuclear danger and all the dangers that I'm talking about. And I got along with all these. I got along with Kim Jong-un. We had dinner. We had everything. And he really liked me, and I got along with him really well. By the way, he's the absolute boss over there. A lot of people said, oh, do you think he really...
that's for
let
sure.
me tell you, I saw things that you don't want to know about. He is the boss. But we had a good relationship. And he doesn't like Biden. He considers him a stupid man, he said. He's a stupid man. Well, at least he speaks his mind. But, in this country, you're not sort of allowed to say it, but I guess you are. You should be allowed to say it if it's true. But we need smart people, and we need people that have an ability to lead. And she doesn't have that ability. Can you imagine? Now, Chairman Xi very well. Can you imagine her and him negotiating, or even standing together? It is, the whole concept is ridiculous. She is terrible. She's terrible. But she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And actually, she looked very much like our great first lady, Melania. She didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman. So we'll leave it at that, right?
Yeah, well, maybe I think part of what people in America want to feel excited and inspired about the future. They want to feel like the future is going to be better than the past, and that America is going to do things that are greater than we've done in the past, reach new heights that make you proud to be an American, and excited about the future.
They want the American dream back. They want the American dream back. More important than anything else. It's like people just found him to be incompetent. And when I debated him, I was like, is this for real? It was.
Yeah, it was just absurd. But I think there are some grand projects that we could do. I mean, I think we could build a base on the moon. We could send American astronauts to Mars. We could build high-speed connections that are more advanced than anything else in the world between our cities, so people have fast transport. It's possible to solve traffic with tunnels. We've already made great progress in Vegas doing that, and and just do things that are exciting and inspiring and make the future feel like it's better than the past.
Well, I saw
And
what you did in Vegas, and I'll tell you, it was amazing. I got to see. I took a big glimpse at it, and it's incredible. It's incredible, and you could do that all over. You could do that all over. It's deep.
Yeah,
You don't even need much structure. Assuming you're in the right areas.
No, it's straightforward.
It's amazing.
I think we could do some things that like China's got incredible high speed rail between its cities, but I think it's actually possible with tunnels if with deregulation, with an ability to actually where it's like legal to actually do the tunnels. Then you could have high speed tunnels that are actually better than anything else in the world for high speed transport between cities, and that would be something that Americans can say, wow, okay, we've got something that's cooler than anyone else in the world. That's the kind of thing that makes you proud to be an American.
And much safer than surface trains, where there is a danger there, with crazy people. It's much safer, much better. And, it's sad because I've seen some of the greatest trains. I find it fascinating. And I've seen the systems and how they work, and the bullet trains, they call them, I guess. And they go unbelievably fast, unbelievably comfortable, with no problems. And we don't have anything like that in this country, not even close. And it doesn't make sense that we don't. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think also there's, I'm kind of hopping on the excess regulation, but I think something that I think people. And that actually it slows down the development of new technologies. I mean, if you take the sort of I think there's room for some reform at the FDA for improving the speed with which we approve drugs that could help save lives and improve people's lives.
And I worked very hard on that. We got that down to the lowest number ever, and we got therapeutics approved in the FDA that people can't even believe the speed. But I took them on. I don't think they like me too much, but I got things approved in the FDA at numbers that they wouldn't believe. And it's a very bureaucratic group. Actually, it's a fine group of people in many cases. I got to know a lot of them, but I was pushing them really hard for Regeneron, for so many different things that were really pretty amazing. But the FDA takes too long. It's 12 years to get a product approved. I got it down to 4, and I got some things done very quickly. But it's really something that is going to have to be worked on because it takes too long. Just takes too long.
Yeah, it just takes too long, and it's you end up in the same with the approval, but it just it takes years instead of something that I think could potentially take months, and that improves people's lives. I think I just wanted to hop on this point that there has to be an active process for reducing rules and regulations, because otherwise they just keep building up every year, and you get hardening of the arteries, and eventually everything's illegal or takes forever, and then we just ossify as a society. We can't make any progress, and it's a really big deal.
Elon, just getting back to the FDA for 1 second, I got something done called Right to Try. This is where you can go in, and if you're terminally ill, you can use a space age, medicine or whatever it may be. We have the best doctors, the best labs in the world. We really do. But people would go to other countries because you couldn't use the product, even if they thought it worked, because it's going through the FDA. I got it approved where you can. You basically, look, nobody wanted, the doctors didn't want it because they wanted it. I got everybody into a room, and we came up with an agreement that you won't get sued. And also, they didn't want it on their record. If somebody's terminally ill and they die after taking a drug, they didn't want that on their record. So we set a separate list. If somebody was, so it wouldn't count as a negative. Okay. And as you know, we got it done. We have saved Right to Try. They've been trying to get this done for 58 years. And it sounds simple, but it wasn't, because the insurance companies, nobody wanted it, but we got it done. Somebody you sign a document that you're not going to sue the insurance companies, the country, you're not going to sue anybody. and we got it done. And we're saving tens of thousands of lives. Right to try. Hopefully, you never need it, but if you
Yeah.
do, you don't have to travel to Asia. You know, people,
Right.
if they had money, they go to
Yeah,
Asia, they go
sure.
to Europe. If they don't have money, they go home and die. That's what happened. They'd go home and die.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and actually, to give Europe some props here, it's like if a drug is approved in Europe, which has a crazy amount of regulations, it should obviously be approved in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, they get more regulations than we do. So why would a drug be approved in Europe and not in the U.S.? That's crazy.
Well, we did it. We did something that really, they've been trying to do it for 50 years, and they just couldn't get it done. And I got it done, and it's really something. But you're right. Some people go to Europe because a drug isn't approved here, but it's approved in Europe, and it's a drug that, generally speaking, would
Yeah.
work. It's pretty crazy.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And I think so long as people are properly informed of the pros and cons, and like these are the risks, this is the risk, and like you make your own decision. That makes sense.
Well, I think just, in sort of closing up, and by the way, I'm looking at the numbers. You got a lot of people listening. I hope you don't get nervous, because you got a lot of people listening to you right now, like 60 million or something. What is that number? It's crazy. It's amazing how you can see that right away. How many? What is the number? Wow. What is it?
Well,
Wow.
I think in terms of people
that's bigger than you said. You said 25, and you're much more than double that number, 25 million. I think you're going to be 60 or 70. And I guess over a period of
in terms of number of people that will hear this conversation over the next few days to weeks, it's going to be hundreds.
That's what they. But I just asked this: are you better off now, or were you better off when I was president? Nobody's better off now. People, we put out polls on that, and nobody's better off now. Inflation has killed it, and they also feel very unsafe. You look at what's going on with a lot of different things. You look at the riots we had at the colleges over. I mean, it's ridiculous, but all of the riots, they just feel unsafe. And now they really feel unsafe because you have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. Maybe I'll call it Kamala migrant crime. But
I mean, with all these things, I always try to get to the ground truth by just asking people. And my mom lives in New York, and I was like, Mom, have any of your friends, been attacked or assaulted? And she said, yeah, 3 of her friends in 3 separate incidents were assaulted just in recent months, just walking around the streets of New York. And I said, well, what happened to the people that assaulted them? Oh, nothing. They got away. Like, and they just know
they always get away.
Nothing's going. And they don't even bother reporting it because they know that they're not going to, people are not going to get prosecuted. They just let, violent criminals out in New York.
The only one that gets prosecuted is Donald Trump. They prosecute Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously messed up.
Oh, it's terrible.
If violent criminals are getting off scot-free, and meanwhile the New York spending massive resources prosecuting you, and it's like, what's this? And I think the sort of sensible public looks at this and says, what the heck's going on here? This is obviously abuse of the legal system. The legal system is supposed to be protecting the public from violent criminals, and it should be obviously allowing the public to make their own decision about who should be president, as opposed to some legal case.
Once they start this precedent, because this can go on with the next one. I mean, this is a very bad precedent what they're doing in terms. Democrat, and I'm being nice when I say that, in many cases, crooked hell. But you get a judge, and you go into an area where a Republican gets 3 or 4% of the vote, and you'll have a jury pool with people that hate Republicans or hate. It could also be the other way, though, because it could start the other way in areas where they hate Democrats, and you get into a Pandora's box. It's a very dangerous thing for this country, and a very dangerous thing even for the state. New York City is losing. New York City and state lose a lot of business over what they did to me, because these people say, we don't want that to happen to us. That's no justice system. You have an unfair system of
Yes.
justice, and it's costing New York State a tremendous amount of money. People are leaving and companies are leaving, and they won't come back. So, all of that stuff is important. But the economy now is the big thing, and we can turn that economy up so fast, and people are going to be back again. We're going to get rid of
Yeah,
inflation.
I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
And I just want to
I
want to
think,
congratulate you. You've done an amazing job. You have definitely got a fertile mind. We can talk. You and I can talk about rockets.
it's kind of you to say thank you.
Tunnels. We can talk about tunnels and rockets and electric cars. So many things. And now you're into the AI, and that's going to be another beauty, I'll say. So it's an amazing thing you've done, Elon. It's an amazing thing, and I congratulate you.
I mean, thank you. And well, I mean, I just to say here, here's to an exciting, inspiring future that people can look forward to and be optimistic and excited about what happens next. And that's the kind of future that I think you will bring as president, and that's why I endorse you.
Well, I appreciate that. That endorsement meant a lot to me. Not all endorsements mean that much, to be honest. Your endorsement meant a lot. And, we have a phrase, make America great again. It's pretty simple, but it really says that we want to make America great again. And we can do it. We can do it now. But if we were going to suffer another 4 years like we've suffered for the last 4 years, I'm not sure the country can ever come back. That's how bad it is. It's so bad. We have to do a lot of things.
I think that's a very real risk.
Yeah, it's a big risk.
It's a very real risk.
Yeah.
And it's, I'd just like to note to people listening, like I've not been very political before. And if you look at my track, is helping with the environment, and actually, I supported Obama. I stood in line for 6 hours. So it's not like I'm like some sort of dyed-in-the-wool long-term Republican. I call myself, historically a moderate Democrat, but now I feel like we're really at a critical juncture for the country, and I think a lot of people thought the Biden administration would be a moderate administration, but it's not, and obviously we're just going to see an even further left administration with Kamala. That's my honest opinion. I mean, her dad is literally. She was brought up as an actual. Her dad is a Marxist economist. You can Google it. I mean, it's not we're not making this up. That's how she was brought up. So, and we want to have a future that is prosperous. And I think we're just at this critical juncture, and I think this is a case of the America is kind of at a fork in the road, and
true.
And I think it will take the path to, like, you are the path to prosperity, and I think Kamala is the opposite. Then that's my honest opinion. I'm gonna get attacked like crazy, and I've also experienced quite a bit of lawfare myself, but I'm just trying to tell people my honest opinion, and I haven't been really active in politics before. And I'm just trying to point out that my track record historically has been moderate, if not moderate, slightly left. And so this is to people out there who are in the moderate camp to say, I think you should support Donald Trump for president. And I think it's actually a very important junction in the road, and we're in deep trouble if it goes the other way.
Well, I want to thank you. And, I actually always did think of you as somewhat left. I must say that. So it's
Yeah.
even more of an